Hey ladies and gentlemen, we are starting our next unit today. We're going to be doing Unit 8, which is on ratios, rates, and percents. So we're going to have our first two lessons this week, followed by a unit quiz, or a lesson quiz. And then we're going to go ahead and we're going to probably end up finishing the rest of the unit next week. So let's take a look. Alright, our first lesson in Unit 8 is on ratios. Our learning target is I can express equivalent ratios using fractions. So this will be pretty easy stuff for today. So it'll be kind of a nice little break. So a ratio is a comparison of two quantities by division. So in my picture, the two things that I'm comparing, and quantities is just like a number of something. The two things I'm comparing are blue circles and red triangles. So when I take a look at my numbers, this is what a ratio looks like in words right here. So I'm comparing blue to red. I have 4 to 6 written with the word 2. I have 4 to 6 written with a colon, and I have 4 to 6 written as a fraction. Now, one thing that I want to point out is there are 3 different ways to write ratios, and those are on the screen, with the word 2, with the colon, and with the fraction bar. Now, even though a ratio looks like a fraction, it's not necessarily a fraction. We cannot add, subtract, multiply, divide. We cannot change an improper fraction, which is really a ratio, into a mixed number. It always has to have 2 numbers. But one thing that we can do is simplify, and that's going to be really, really important for us, especially when we move on later into the unit and we're trying to do some other things. So I'm going to take my 4, 6, and I'm going to actually simplify it right now, and I'm going to divide both of these by 2, and I'm going to have 2 to 3. Now, one thing that we need to make sure is that we're reading our ratios correctly. That does not say 2/3, that says 2 to 3. All right, let's take a look at our first couple examples. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to write each ratio in 3 ways. So we're going to use the word 2, the colon, and the fraction, and then we're going to be sure to express the ratio in simplest form, and we'll just do that one time probably as a fraction because that's the way that I prefer to do it. So the first thing that we're comparing is pennies to dimes. So I notice that I have 1, 2, 3 pennies. And dimes I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9. So I can write my ratio 3 to 9 with the word 2. I can write it 3 to 9 with the colon. And I can write it 3 to 9 with the fraction. But I do want to simplify my last one here. I can divide both of those by 3. And I can change that to 1 to 3. All right, let's take a look at example number 2. This time I'm comparing blue crayons to red crayons. I have 1, 2 red crayons. And I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 blue crayons. So I wrote my ratio 2 to 6 with words. I'm going to write it 2 to 6 with a colon, and I'm going to write it 2 to 6 as a fraction. I'm going to simplify this last one, divide them both by 2, the numerator and denominator, and I end up with 1 to 3. All right, now let's take a look at a little more complex ratio problem, even though they're still both pretty easy. So we have Mr. Lombard survey his class about their pets. Use the table to write each ratio in simplest forms. So we have birds, there was 10, dogs 9, cats 8, gerbils 7, and lizards 2. Number 1, students who own lizards to the total number of pets. So I want lizards to total. So I need to go over here and I'm going to have to add up. I'm going to have to add all these up. Well, I've got, let's see, 10. Those two together is 20, 29. So for a total, it looks like of 36. So 36 is going to be my total. So lizards was 2. So I have 2 to 36. And I'm going to simplify that by dividing both of those by 2, and I have 1 to 18. So the ratio of lizards to total pets was 1 to 18. Number 2, students who own dogs to total number of pets. So dogs looks like it was 9. In total was 36, including the dogs in there, by the way. If I simplify both of those, dividing by 9, I get 1 to 4. So my ratio of dogs to total pets is 1 to 4. All right, moving on. So a lot of times what we need to do is we need to identify if there are equivalent ratios. So are the ratios the same even though that they look differently? So there's 2 different methods I can do this. Method 1 is simplifying each ratio, and method 2 is cross-multiplying. I don't care how you do this, it's totally up to you. So let's take a look at our example. Our example says Hamdi drives 48 miles in 30 minutes and Mahado drives 32 miles in 20 minutes. So I want to know, are those equivalent? Did they drive the same? So the two things I'm comparing is miles and minutes. So my first one, I'm going to do method 1. I'm going to simplify my ratio. So for Hamdi's ratio, we have 48 miles in 30 minutes. I could simplify that by dividing both of those by, let's see, 6. And 48 divided by 6 is 8, and 30 divided by 6 is 5. Okay. Now I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to do Mahado's. Mahado's was 32 miles in 20 minutes. And I can simplify that by dividing both of those by 4. And I get 8 to 5. So yes, those two, Hamdi and Mahado, their ratios of miles driven in how many minutes is the same. Those are equivalent. Okay. Now I do want to do this again by cross multiplying just so you see what this looks like. So let's see, Hamdi went 48 miles in, was it 30 minutes? And Mahado went 32 miles in 20. So how this is going to work, I'm going to cross multiply. I'm going to start on the bottom. So I'm going to go 30 times 32, which is 960. And I'm going to do 20 times 48, which is also 960. So that means that these are equivalent. So yes, they're equivalent. If I would have got different numbers right here, then it would have not been equivalent. So either way you do it is totally up to you. Both of those methods work great. So let's take a look at our first one. We're going to determine whether the ratios are equivalent. I've got 16 tacos for $4 and I've got 20 tacos for $5. So I'm going to do method 2, which was cross multiplying. So I like to always put money first because money should be first when we talk about ratios and we talk about rates, which we'll do tomorrow. So I'm going to go $4 for 16 tacos. And I want to know if that is equal, but I'm going to put equal sign there anyway. I want to know if that's the same as $5 for 20 tacos. So I'm going to cross multiply. I'm going to do 16 times 5 first. And I get 80. I'm going to do 20 times 4. And I get 80. So those are equivalent. I'm just going to write equivalent. So those ones are equivalent. Number 2. I have 12 math problems solved in 8 minutes and 20 math problems solved in 12 minutes. Again, I'm going to do the cross multiplying way. So the first one I have is, let's see, 12 math problems in 8 minutes. And I want to know if that's the same as 20 math problems in 12 minutes. So I'm going to cross multiply. So 8 times 20 is 160. And 12 times 12 is 144. Notice how those are not the same. So those are not equivalent. All right. I would have got those same answers, equivalent and not equivalent, if I would have simplified the fractions as well. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, that ends our lesson for ratios. I told you it's pretty easy. There are 3 IXLs I'm going to ask for you to do. They will not take you very long. Make sure to get to score 70 if you want full credit. Message me on Schoology if you have any questions. Otherwise, we'll see you tomorrow. Peace.